Hello, welcome to my channel, Save Infinity. In this video, I just wanted to kind of, briefly kind of share some of my own story and series of unfortunate events that have, occurred throughout my life. Just as a way of I feel like so often it's so easy, when you are putting videos and things out there to, do it all in such a more positive light and aspect that, when you're watching these videos, it can sometimes feel a bit okay, well, that's all great, having those positive messages and guidance and what have you. But what it can kind of sometimes feel a bit disconnected to your own experience or reality if you're not in such a great state of mind or having the greatest experience, in your outer reality or inner world or what have you. Sometimes some of those messages or the vibe of the content and stuff can just feel a bit well, what do you know? Your life is probably all sunshine and rainbows. So how can you easy to say those things and, totally get those vibes and how easy it can be to feel that way or to even perceive things that way when that sort of aspect of life and reality is so often just kind of, shoved under the rug or kept in our little private closets, but not really, spoken about or delved too much into in our outer worlds. So it is so easy to just look at the outer world and just feel a bit yeah, great vibes, great message, but it's not hitting quite at home or, and it can, just feel there's just such a disconnect from that point A to point B and such a big jump that it almost just feels like that just isn't even for your reality or something, totally been there, experience, all that vibe. So yes, so even though I myself do like to put out a lot of more positive and uplifting messages and that vibe and stuff and what have you, I still have gone through a lot of darker times and experienced a lot more of, the darker aspects of this greater earth reality of, well, what have you, of our human lives. And so, just as a way of to kind of say and express as well how these things that I do share have helped me and myself through my own journey of, certain darker times and what have you as well. So it's not always just sunshine and rainbows at all in any aspect. There's always ups and downs for, for all of our life journeys. So not feeling just because, you may have experienced some more downtimes or may currently be experiencing a more downtime, that doesn't mean that you still can't have or can't achieve those greater up times too, or that, and especially, as well, as hard as it is, sometimes it is those downtimes that can kind of latch onto us and keep us locked into more down, negative type times and energies and what have you, but also still knowing that that's still a totally normal and natural part of life's journey and being human and what have you. Even during spiritual awakening journeys and what have you, and death and rebirths and shadow work, there's a lot of dark and gritty moments and times. It's not always just high vibes and sunshine. There are the times required for you to get loud, get down low, deep and dirty in the dark, and sift through the mud of your soul and do a deep scrubbing and and have a giggle while you're down there. There's still a lot of that can happen too. So not to feel too swayed or bewildered if you do see a lot of happy and positive messages that means that they're not for you, or that you're doing something wrong or what have you. There is the dark and the light, the light and the shadow aspects, the yin and the yang, the duality type aspects. So there is all of that mixed in for everything. So for my own life and experience and journey, I won't go into too much of the gritty nitty details, but just a brief overview. I've experienced all the colors of the rainbow in aspects of, you know, abuse and trauma. Like maybe not all, like that's a bit extravagant, but you know, if you know, you know. You know, like physical, emotional, financial, sexual abuse, you know, all the abuses from, you know, friends, family, lovers, strangers, you know, from birth to now. You know, and a lot of like just those just bewildering moments where you're just like, what even is life, you know, that you almost you just got to give it that slap of such is life, like, you know, and we roll on. And, you know, as well, what I find it seems as well, being on these sort of journeys and, you know, being people more like prone to tapping into these ideas or what have you, seem to as well like be more prone to having these sort of series of unfortunate event type life stories where it's almost like you've been on like a set of a movie scene the whole time or something, where it's almost so tragic and bewildering that you just like, you start looking around and are like, something's going on here, like something's not right, which, you know, may be even part of purpose and parcel of it all, who knows. But it definitely can be something that seems to happen. You know, to be honest, throughout my life, I never did give too much thought to it, probably for good reason, because that just is not going to do you any good. You know, I always just had like, oh, such is life type, you know, good old Ned Kelly slogan mentality about it. But, you know, when I do kind of sit back and look at it all a bit more, it is kind of just like, not funny, but just like, not even quite bewildering, but just like, you know, just uncanny almost of how, you know, many like just unfortunate events just kind of popped my way into my reality. You know, even just like random things of like being bullied at school and stuff or what have you, of, you know, walking down the hallway and people trying to trip you over or throwing food and drink at your head, and it's like, I didn't even know these people or do anything to them. It was just, you know, just me existing. And I feel like that's sometimes not the like funny, but sometimes you just do have to laugh it off sort of journey of these sort of journeys, whatever it is that we're on sometimes, is that it is just like people just randomly go out of their way to harass you for like God knows what reason, and you're just like, what? And I think sometimes it kind of is that sort of feeling and aspect in a way, because that kind of is how reality does work in a way, right? That sort of like movie scene aspect, how like every, you know, millisecond or milli moment is like a new, like, you know, loaded fractal of reality almost, that we're kind of moving through, you know, almost like stringing together little 3D scenes to create a moving life scene or movie or what have you. You know, the whole like aspect of, you know, time is an illusion and not linear, and, you know, infinite outcomes or what have you. It's almost like, you know, different movie scenes from different timelines stitched together to create the movie you're experiencing, you know, which is why sometimes you just all these random out of place happenings or people suddenly, you know, seeming one way or suddenly acting a little bit the other way can seem a bit choppy or changey, because our reality is a little bit, you know, more choppy and changey than we actually currently view and perceive it through this 3D linear lens, and is a bit more, you know, dream or movie like, in that it's like different scenes kind of chopped and sliced together to create a life sequence. You know, kind of like generated by the greater power and energy of, you know, God and source, and, you know, your own subconscious mind kind of like merging together to create this this experience that we find ourselves in. So, you know, so in that aspect, kind of just not allowing the you know, negative things or what have you that pop up to drag you down too much, but also not just kind of, you know, shoving them off to the side and in the cupboard type vibe, you know, still having, you know, acceptance or accountability with those moments, and, you know, processing, you know, the energy and traumas or what have you as you need to, and, you know, doing the self-love and, you know, and greater, you know, forgiveness and love type work that you need to, like, you know, still doing all that, but also still not holding on to it in such a way that it is so, you know, your life and your story, or such a solid concrete thing, when you do look at reality as being a bit more like malleable and dreamlike or movie-like from that aspect, and, you know, kind of being a different array of experiences, opportunities and lessons and what have you thrown at you, either to help you, you know, learn, grow, have a good time, or to help awaken you to the greater reality and things like that. You know, there's so many rhymes and reasons for these things. So not getting too attached to the happenings so much, and kind of, you know, slapping it with the, you know, such is life, but still doing the healing and integration as you need, and, you know, taking that time for hermiting if you need, or, you know, taking the time to take yourself out for a good time if you need, whatever it may be. But yeah, you know, just accepting the sway and the swing of the journey, and kind of going more with the sway of the swing of the journey, as easy or hard as that may be sometimes, you know, and just allowing yourself to go with the flow as well, whether that may be perceived as more of a good or bad time. Like, sometimes we need those more lower, denser times to kind of, you know, purge out and get new perspectives and come out growing, you know, brighter and shinier through that. You know, there's such an endless cycle of like death and rebirths in that way. So not being too, you know, taken down by it or what have you, just going with the flow with it. You know, if you feel like you are being taken down with it, just go with the flow with it, not being too like, yeah. But yeah, might leave that one here for now. Sending you so much peace, love, light, and blessings as always, and wishing you all the best on your journey. Bye.